So for what, 50 years now, there's been one story about the Manson murders. This whole helter-skelter race war thing. But what if that official story is a complete lie? A journalist named Tom O'Neill spent 2 decades investigating, and what he found suggests the truth is far more disturbing. So, let's unravel this thing. So get this. This was the response from the prosecutor, Vincent Bugliosi, when he was confronted with evidence that his star witness totally lied on the stand. I mean, this is the guy who built his entire career on the Manson case. He wrote the book on it, and his reaction to a massive hole in his own story was just, who cares? Because that's what O'Neill's investigation found, that pulling on this one little loose thread doesn't just challenge a tiny detail of the case. No, it unravels the entire story that we've all been told for decades. Okay, so part 1, Helter Skelter's first crack. Now, the official story is pretty simple. It's almost like a movie script. You have Charles Manson, who's furious after being rejected by a record producer named Terry Melcher. So in revenge, he sends his followers to Melcher's old house on Cielo Drive to butcher everyone inside. The grand plan? To start an apocalyptic race war he called Helter Skelter. The entire motive, the whole why of the crime, it all hinged on Terry Melcher's testimony. He got up on the stand and told the jury he was absolutely terrified of Charles Manson after their last meeting, which she claimed happened months before the murders. But this is where the official story just completely breaks down. Look at this timeline. Melcher swears under oath his last contact with Manson was in May of '69. But hidden deep in prosecutor Bugliosi's own files, O'Neill found notes showing Melcher visited the Manson ranch not just once, but multiple times after the murders. This is the same guy who claimed he was terrified for his life. And we're not talking about some rumor here. Bugliosi wrote it down himself. He even crossed out the most damaging parts of his own notes before he had to turn them over to the defense. I mean, think about what that means. The prosecutor knew his star witness. The man his entire motive was built on was committing perjury on the stand. So part 2, Manson's get-out-of-jail-free cards. And that whole lie about Terry Melcher? Turns out that was just the tip of the iceberg. O'Neill's investigation uncovered a much bigger, much more baffling pattern. Law enforcement just repeatedly let Manson slide in the year leading up to the murders. Just run down this list for a second. Manson was a federal parolee. As Bugliosi himself even wrote, any one of these violations, grand theft auto, rape, having stolen credit cards in his pocket, any of it was more than enough to send him back to prison for a long, long time. And yet, it never happened. Again and again, Manson and his followers get arrested only to be mysteriously released. Stolen car rings, gun charges, statutory rape, it was all just waved away. So you have to ask why. Why was this career criminal, who was clearly getting more and more violent, being so consistently protected? And that brings us to part 3, the spy in the clinic. The answer, O'Neill suggests, might be hiding in the one place the Manson family was born. San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, and specifically in a free medical clinic that was, let's say, a hub for a lot more than just treating hippies. The connections here, they're just staggering. Okay, so it starts with Manson's parole officer, who makes the very weird decision to let him go live in the Haight. That's a parole violation, by the way. Then it turns out that same parole officer also works at the very same free clinic Manson starts hanging out at. And what's going on at this clinic? Well, it's a center for government-funded research on drugs and behavior control. And one of the key researchers there, a doctor named Louis Jolly West, who just so happens to be a confirmed contractor for the CIA's most notorious mind control program, MKUltra. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, MKUltra was a real, documented, and totally illegal CIA program. They were trying to master mind control. They secretly dosed American citizens with LSD. They studied hypnosis, psychological torture, reprogramming. I mean, it's the exact toolkit Charles Manson was using to turn runaway teenagers into killers. And it was happening in the exact same time and place as a top CIA researcher who was studying the very same thing. Which brings us to our last section, the story we were told. Because at the end of all this, we're left with 2 completely different stories. The one we've all heard for half a century, and the one that was buried in thousands of pages of documents that took a journalist 20 years to find. And this is really the core of it all. On one side, you have the official story, a simple, terrifying tale of a singular, crazy evil. It's a clean narrative. On the other side, you have this messy, complicated reality of perjury, cover-ups, and bizarre connections to covert government operations. O'Neill's work doesn't say Manson was innocent, but it asks if he was maybe something else, an asset, an experiment that just got way out of control. And this leads us to the real question here. It's not really about Manson's guilt anymore. It's about why the helter-skelter story was so important to begin with. Why would you risk your entire case on a witness who is lying? Why would you let a violent parolee walk free over and over again? Was the official story just a simple way to explain something horrific, or was it a cover for something far more sinister? And that's really the ultimate takeaway. O'Neill himself admits he doesn't have the final answer. But by proving that the official narrative is built on a foundation of lies, he forces all of us to ask a really terrifying question. If the story of one of America's most infamous crimes isn't true, what other parts of our history have we gotten wrong?